everybody. Happy Monday to all. A couple very important points I want to start with before we get into the gist of what we're doing today. Call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 29, House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage, pursuant to the order of reference Tuesday, February 16th. The committee resumes clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-10, an act to amend the Broadcasting Act and to make related and consequential amendments to other acts. Today's meeting, of course, is taking place in a hybrid format, which we certainly are used to by now. It's been, I guess it's been over a year. We can call it that. And of course, as you know, a couple rules just to point out to everybody, and they're not official rules in the book, but nevertheless, it helps us go along with our committee, and that is try to avoid talking over each other. If you want to get my attention, you know how to do it on the side here. Just raise your hand electronically, or if you're not hearing interpretation, or you're not hearing the volume, or you're not hearing the speaker, you can do that, or just wave your hand to get my attention if something technically goes wrong. So if that happens, please get my attention, obviously, and we'll try to fix it. Now, we've had some technical difficulties from the Ottawa side of things. I've had a few difficulties of my own on sound. I don't want to alert the IT people in Ottawa. This is a thing that's originating from my office here in Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland and Labrador. So now one very important thing. Sorry, I saw Ms. McPherson. You had your hand up. Did you? Oh, you okay? We have to address something that is extremely important to this committee, and we have to do it, I think, right away. It won't take too long, I don't think, but we really have to wish a happy birthday to the member from Drummond, Mr. Shampoo. Happy birthday, Mr. Shampoo.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Indeed.
Est-ce que c'est 35, Martin?
Is it 35 this year? 34. 34.
Oui. Happy birthday again, sir. Okay, so now, C10. We dealt with G10. We're now going to deal with G11. Just a quick note about G11. I just want to bring to everybody's attention. If G11 is adopted, BQ22 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. Okay. And I go to the speakers list. I see Ms. DeBruzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am moving G11. This builds on the ownership clauses that we were working on earlier, and it would allow the CRTC to obtain ownership information from all types of undertakings. C10, as it was originally drafted, didn't account for corporate structures such as cooperatives, trusts, or partnerships. Sorry, I see this is popping. So this would allow for that broader ability to take into account different corporate structures.
Okay, Ms. Harder.
Sure, thank you, Chair. Chair, I actually wanted to move a dilatory motion that we would resume.
Ms. Harder, sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'll just be 1 second. I have to deal with G11 first, okay, because it was just moved by Ms. DeBruzen.
Okay.
But I'll keep your name up there because once we deal with G11, then we can discuss you're dealing with a motion that has nothing to do with G11, correct?
I understand that, yeah.
Okay.
So then, once G11 has been dealt with, then would you like me to raise my hand again, or would you like to just circle back?
Yes, you can raise your hand, or I'll circle back to you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So G11, I'm going to Mr. Reyes.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like for the specialist with us today to explain the impact of this change in G11, please.
Mr. Olson.
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Mr. Reyes. So the current wording in Bill C-10 would have allowed the CRTC to obtain ownership information related to corporations that hold licenses, but there are some ownership structures out there that are not corporations, partnerships and trusts, for instance. And so we we're just trying to make sure that this doesn't unintentionally limit the CRTC's ability to get ownership information from licensees that may not be corporations. Thank you, thank you.
Sorry, folks. Here I was lecturing you on doing this for over a year, and I'm on mute. Nevertheless, Ms. DeBruzen, you had your hand up? Oh, you had it up from before. Okay. So do I see any further discussion on G11? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. Shall G11 carry?
No.
Here a no.
On division?
On division?
No.
No.
No, I would like to vote, please.
Yes, sir. On G11. Mr. Housefather.
Yes.
Madame Bissette.
Oui.
Ms. DeBruson.
Yes.
Mr. Van Couverden.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Monsieur Reyes.
No.
Mr. Aitchison.
No.
Mr. Shields.
No.
Ms. Harder.
No.
Monsieur Champoux.
Oui.
Ms. McPherson.
Yes.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Okay, I declare the amendment carried. And as I said prior, G11 is now adopted. Therefore, BQ22, if you go to your song sheets, folks, BQ22 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. Ms. Harder, I believe you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, I do have just a quick question, I guess, before moving on to the motion that I wish to move. I noted on Friday that we were in the midst of debate with regards to the motion that was on the floor at that point in time. One of the members of the committee, Ms. DeBruson, raised her hand and asked, she put forward a dilatory motion that then brought that debate to an end. At that point in time, you said that because it was a dilatory motion, that it superseded, and therefore all other hands that were raised were suspended and not called upon. Just a moment ago, I attempted to move another dilatory motion, and I was told that the motion at hand needed to be taken care of first, and then the dilatory motion. I'm wondering why on Friday a dilatory motion took precedence, but today it doesn't.
Well, for the simple reason that we started that debate, obviously we commenced debate on that one. It has to shut down, and we had to dispense with it on that one. You're saying that you had a dilatory motion now?
That's correct. So just a moment ago, I indicated to you that I intended to bring forward a dilatory motion. And
I see. Okay.
And you commented that G11 needed to be taken care of first before you could hear from me. But on Friday, you gave the dilatory motion precedence. So I was just wondering why those two rulings were incongruent.
I don't know. It's a good question. I'll check it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the clerk about that and see if it was done a mistake. Nevertheless, you certainly can raise. You want to do your dilatory motion now, or do you want a ruling on that?
You can confer with the clerk. I'm happy to move forward with my dilatory motion.
Okay, I'll do the clerk thing first, and then I'll come back to you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Just suspend vote for just a couple of minutes. Shouldn't take long.
Thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay? Just nod your head. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Harder, we had a little discussion there about that. That's a good point. You brought up a dilatory motion. I should have heard you out on that point, which I did not. And for that, you have my apologies. I sincerely apologize for that. I started the other debate. I was focused on that one, and it never registered as such being a dilatory. And I should have heard you out, so I apologize. We did dispense with G11. If you wish to go ahead now and do your motion,
Thank you, Chair. I do.
and
Thank you.
and apologies again for that. You were in the right there.
No, thank you for seeking clarification. I very much appreciate that. Mr. Chair, I do wish to return to a motion that was proposed to the committee or brought forward to the committee on Friday at the last meeting. And of course, the motion that I moved at that point in time was that we would request the Minister of Justice to produce an updated charter statement under Section 4.2 of the Department of Justice Act with respect to the potential effects of Bill C-10 as amended to date on the rights and freedoms that are guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This motion further said that we would invite the Minister of Canadian Heritage and the Minister of Justice to appear before the committee to discuss the implications of C-10 as amended to date for users of social media services, and that we would suspend clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-10, notwithstanding the committee's decision of March 26, 2021, until it has received the updated charter statement requested under paragraph A and has heard from the ministers invited under paragraph B of this motion. The reason I moved this motion on Friday was because the bill that we are currently debating, Bill C-10, has undergone significant change since it was first brought forward in the fall and was at that point in time in November provided with a charter statement. Now, of course, that charter statement was up to date at that time. However, because Section 4.1 has been removed and thereby protections for the content that an individual might post to their social media accounts is now subject to government scrutiny. I do believe that it is in the best interest of this committee then to seek another charter statement in order to make sure that it is in compliance.
Sorry, Ms. Carter, I need some clarification. You did say it was dilatory motion.
Yes.
You want to make a motion to resume the debate that commenced on Friday. Is that correct? Just so I get that straight.
I do. So, Chair, I would move that we debate the motion that was originally brought forward on
just
Friday.
So that everybody's clear, the dilatory motion is the resumption of debate that took place on Friday. The reason why it's dilatory is for the same reason that a debate should be adjourned. So we have to go to the debate right away. And you now heard the clarity around the motion. We're going to proceed to the vote on the resumption of the debate on the motion from Ms. Harder. Clerk.
Sir, resuming debate on the motion of Ms. Harder. Mr. Housefather.
No.
Madame Bessette.
No.
Ms. DeBrusen.
No.
Mr. Vancouverden.
No.
Mr. Lewis.
No.
Monsieur Reyes.
Oui.
Mr. Aitchison.
Yes.
Mr. Shields.
Yes.
Ms. Harder.
Yes.
Mr. Champoux.
Oui.
Ms. McPherson. Yes. 6 yeas, 5 nays.
All right, we now go to resumption of debate following that motion. So I have the list here. Ms. Harder, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that very much. And I also return my thanks to the committee for hearing me out on this. Mr. Chair, as stated, this piece of legislation, Bill C-10, has undergone significant change with the removal of Section 4.1. As a result, it is questioned as to whether or not an individual's rights to put up content of their choice on their social media platforms or using apps on their phone is actually allowed based on the rules of or based on Bill C-10. So, in other words, it is presumed, not just by me, but by other experts, that individuals' rights will actually be brought under attack by this legislation. And so it seems then very important for the members of this committee to receive another, an updated charter statement. Now, of course, what this would do is it would take the bill that is in front of us, Bill C-10, as it exists now in its amended form. It would take Bill C-10 and it would put it up against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And this charter statement would be delivered by the Justice Minister, and it would state as to whether or not this bill holds up. The reason why this is so important is, of course, because the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the supreme law of the land. And Section 2B protects freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, freedom of belief. And when we are in a place in Canadian history where we are using social media platforms as the public square, it is important to protect the voices of Canadians and how they express those voices in those spaces. For the government to impose itself or to empower the CRTC to impose itself, which of course is directed by the government, and on people and their freedom of expression, their freedom of belief, their freedom of opinion. When the government goes so far as to start regulating what people are saying or posting, it has gone too far. Now, of course, I'm offering my take on it, and I'm offering the take of many other experts who have analyzed this piece of legislation. What I'm asking for is that this committee also requests the take of the Justice Minister, which again would be accomplished by a charter statement. Now, one of the reasons why this is so crucial, of course, is notwithstanding the most important reason, which is protecting the fundamental rights and freedoms of Canadians. But also, it's been interesting because over the weekend I've watched as the Minister of Heritage has responded to the concerns that are raised around Bill C-10. And, one of the accusations that was brought out by Minister Guilbeault is that every opposing voice or question asked or concern raised with regards to Bill C-10, all of a sudden those individuals are being called extremists. So if you disagree with the government, if you have a question about a bill being brought forward by the governing party, if you are opposed in any way, then now you are labeled an extremist. Now, if that is what is just happening in this small fraction of time, I can only imagine what type of stipulations would be put in place by this same minister should this legislation be successful. And if he and his department are responsible then for telling Canadians what they can and cannot post, then anything that might be against the ideology of this government would be flagged. Anything that would raise questions with regards to a government decision would be taken down. Anything that would make someone feel uncomfortable, or if they should choose to take offense at material that an individual posts, that would be removed. It's a silencing effect, and it's wrong, and it must be stopped. Canadians must be protected. Their charter rights must be preserved. And so I am asking something that I believe is extremely reasonable, and that is that we would push the pause button on this committee for a very short period of time, and that we would seek this statement from the Justice Department looking for a opinion with regard to whether or not Bill C-10 does in fact align itself under the charter. And if it does, okay. But if it doesn't, then this committee has some work to do in terms of making sure that charter rights of Canadians are indeed protected. With that, I have a motion that has been that's been put on the table, asking for that statement and asking to hear from the Minister of Heritage. And I would ask the members of this committee to vote in favor of it.
Monsieur Reyes.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't on mute anymore. I'm glad we're taking time today and that the committee agreed to re-debate my colleague Ms. Harder's motion. The motion is at the very basis of why we're working in Parliament here to defend the rights under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. On Friday, a little over a week ago, the Liberals, out of the blue,
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
point of order.
Mr. Reyes, I think I know what you're getting at, Mr. Aitchison. It's
Yeah.
we're not hearing the interpretation right now. And Mr. Aitchison, is that what you wanted to? Yes, okay. We're not hearing the interpretation right now. Bonjour tout le monde.
good day, everyone. I'm Scott. I'm chair.
Voulez-vous que je parle?
Would you like me to speak French, Mr. Chair, to test it out?
Amy, are we okay now? No, we're not. Sorry, folks. I'll give you the floor again, Mr. Reyes, once we get this fixed. Just hang in there one moment. And actually, Mr. Reyes, tell us about your wonderful riding.
Avec
It would be my great pleasure. And one day, Mr. Chair, I hope I'll have the pleasure of welcoming you to our magnificent riding. Very close to Mr. Champoux' riding, I would like to point out. And we have an unending battle over whose riding is best.
aux enjeux.
Oh, we're bringing up the real matters today.
Look what I've just started.
Voilà.
Okay, so thank you for that. It seems we are now back. I just heard the interpretation, so we'll now go back to Mr. Reyes. You have the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll set aside that debate on whose poutine is better and we'll come back to Bill C-10. I'm not sure when interpretation cut out, so I'll go back to the beginning. First, I would like to thank everyone on the committee for agreeing to re-debate my colleague Ms. Harder's motion. This motion is at the very heart of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I think that this is an issue for all parties of all political stripes. It's important for all of us to consider it. And why? Well, for those who are listening who might not know, the Minister of Justice for every bill must table recommendations in the form of an opinion to ensure that the bill respects that Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And by the way, Mr. Chair, in the same vein, I would encourage all committee members and all listeners to look at the C-10 Charter statement by the Minister. In that statement, he analyzed Clause 4.1 or Section 4.1, which the Liberals recently removed. And what did this do? Well, it had a direct impact on the very statement by the Minister on the impact that the bill has on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So over the weekend, on social media and in the media, I saw that Minister Guilbeault and his friends tried to convince Canadians and Quebecers that the Conservatives were against the Broadcasting Act. I would like to emphasize that that is not the case. To the contrary, I think all committee members have already demonstrated since the beginning of this study our true desire to move this bill forward. I think everyone agrees. What is the proof? Well, we have 118 amendments that we drafted after our consultations. I think this also shows that the bill was in need of much improvement right from the get-go. Now, what did the government do? The government gave powers to the CRTC, according to our experts, gave power to the CRTC to regulate users on social media, etc., for what they upload, instead of regulating GAFA, the major online players. We wanted to create a level playing field between traditional broadcasters and these online broadcasters. So what we're debating today is that the government itself, by removing Section 4.1 of Clause 3, itself created a loophole or created a gap in the bill. And we want to hear from the Minister of Justice, who himself is a Liberal. All that we're asking, and I can't believe the Liberals are against this, is to hear the Minister of Justice's opinion as to whether or not there is an impact on Canadians' rights and freedoms. I also saw the minister over the weekend not be able to explain why that section was there, and now that section has been removed. And with that said, Mr. Chair, and for those listening to us, here we are, the Green Party, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Bloc, we're the opposition parties. We're asking questions, and some people might think that this is partisan. However, I would point your attention towards experts in the field, experts on the Charter, university professors, CRTC administrators. Many of these experts have sounded the alarm, saying that the government itself has created a gap in this bill. The minister himself said that he was in favor and that the government was in favor of regulating user-generated content. This is what is frightening when we see the government debating in this way on rights and freedoms. It is extremely concerning. We must take the time to do this right. If it takes a week or 2, 3 weeks longer to adopt Bill C-10 while protecting Canadians' rights and freedoms, we'll all be very proud. Because we all want to protect our culture. We all want to protect our broadcasters. We want for regulation to be fair and equitable between traditional broadcasters and internet broadcasters. But currently, there is a problem that has come up in the process of clause-by-clause consideration, and we cannot continue our work until we have a response from the minister. Mr. Chair, I mentioned Peter Menzies, who was a CRTC administrator in the past, and he called this an outright attack on rights and freedoms, which are the very foundation of the Constitution. We also heard from the Emeritus Professor of Law at the University of Ottawa, Michael Geist. He is highly esteemed in his field, a veritable expert, and he even criticized the former Conservative government. You can have a look and check. But Mr. Geist said that he never saw a government in his life that was so anti-internet. We heard from a number of speakers, a number of witnesses. James Dirth was the director of the Centre for Freedom of Expression at a Canadian university, talking about how user-generated content should not be regulated, and said that this change to Bill C-10 was dangerous. So we're not inventing anything. We're not making this up. I would point your attention to opinions of all of these experts. In French-speaking Canada, I'm not sure the alarm has been sounded as loudly, but in English-speaking Canada, it certainly has. So in conclusion, Mr. Chair, I hope that, along with my fellow committee members, we'll be able to put partisanship aside. There should be no partisanship when it comes to freedom of expression, and we need to make sure we have heard the clear opinion from the minister on this situation before we move any further through our clause-by-clause consideration. the minister is in a government that prorogued Parliament, took 6 years before tabling this bill on the Broadcasting Act. The minister also decided that it was okay to remove this entire section, so he can be the last one to disagree with our taking extra time on this bill. And I will sleep well at night, Mr. Chair, because I'm working to protect Canadians and Quebecers' rights and freedoms, especially given that this government is trying to attack those rights and freedoms. I hope my fellow colleagues will lend us their support so that the minister can come and elucidate these matters for us so that we can continue doing our work and our duty as parliamentarians.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague for bringing forward this conversation. Obviously, for me as well, the charter is one of the most important things that we can be ensuring that we are in alignment with and that we are supporting. The NDP's always fought for freedom of expression, and that's very, very important that we do protect that and that we do work on that. And I think it's also very important that we get this right. This is very important to broadcasters across the country. This is very important to all Canadians. So I agree very much with some of the things that I've heard my colleague, Mr. Reyes, say today. I'd like to propose a sub-amendment, if I could, to Ms. Harder's amendment, because I think one of the things that we need to ensure as a committee is that we are trying to move this forward as rapidly as we can, that we do our due diligence, that we do what we need to do to ensure that we have the best legislation coming forward.
Thank you. Ms. McPherson, sorry to interrupt. I apologize. Just before you start, just a clarification. It's an amendment to a motion. You don't have to sub-amend because we're not dealing with an amendment. It's Ms. Harder's motion, of course. When you do the amendment, do you have a copy to send to the clerk?
I do. Would you like me to send it to the entire committee or just to the clerk who will then forward it?
How about to the clerk, and then we'll distribute it through the entire committee.
And I can say that it is. I can describe it to everyone. It is not a terribly complicated.
Yeah. The only thing that I asked, sorry for the interruptions again. Could you do it very slowly so that it gives us time to write it down and take notes?
Mr. Sims, you wouldn't be saying that I speak too fast on a regular basis, would you?
I'm from Newfoundland and Labrador. You all speak too slow, so my apologies. But in that being said, if you could just take your time with it, that'd be great. Thank you.
And really all that I am looking at is imposing a bit of a time constraint on the request to the Minister of Justice to produce the charter statement so that the committee can continue to work once we have received the information back from the minister. So I would be proposing that in the next 10 days, that we would request that information back. So in section A of Ms. Harder's motion, it says request that the Minister of Justice produce an updated charter statement in the next 10 days under section 4.2 of the Department of Justice Act. In section B, the addition would be invite the Minister of Canadian Heritage and the Minister of Justice to appear before the committee to discuss implications of Bill C-10 as amended to date for users of social media services in the next 10 days. And then in section C, I would be including suspend clause by clause consideration of Bill C-10 for a maximum of 10 days, notwithstanding the committee's decision of March 26, 2021, provided that it has received the updated charter statement. So it's simply adding a time constraint because I know that everybody on this committee is very keen to get back to work to make sure that we are doing the job that our constituents have sent us to Ottawa to do, and that we are in fact improving what I think we can all agree is a very imperfect bill that does need, as Mr. Reyes pointed out, almost 120 amendments from various parties. So that would be my recommendation. And I certainly hope that we can move forward and continue to work. I struggle, of course, I'm a new parliamentarian, Mr. Chair, and I struggle when we do see filibustering within committees. Unfortunately, I've experienced it in a number of committees I sit on, so I would hope that we could move forward and make a decision on this and continue our work for the people of Canada.
Ms. McPherson, no need to discuss your newness. I've been here 18 years, and I started this meeting with a mistake. So if that makes you feel any better, I just want to rehab what you just said, and just so that everybody is clear. In Part A of Ms. Harder's motion, you want to include the words "in the next 10 days" following charter statement. In B, you want to end B by saying "in the next 10 days." And then in C, you say suspend clause by clause consideration of Bill C10 for a maximum 10 days. I missed the other part. There was another part to that. Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, Chair. Just to add that after the decision of March 26, 2021, that we would include the words provided that
Provided
it has
that,
received.
correct. Okay. I'm assuming that Amy has received or in the midst of receiving the wording.
It has been sent.
Has been sent. Okay, so folks, we're going to get that out to you ASAP if you haven't received it already. Now, that being said, is that it, Ms. McPherson? Did you want to add to that? You still have the floor, technically.
I'm fine with moving on.
Okay, Ms. DeBruzen.
Thank you. And I'm waiting to see the exact wording of the proposed amendment to the motion. But I may be seeking to sub-amend that amendment and once I actually see the proper wording. My question here is, there's been a lot of talk. I want to emphasize the importance of the Charter rights of freedom of expression. I believe in very strongly, as I believe our government does as well. And what the 4.1 amendment dealt with was only to do with social media companies when they act as broadcasters. I think sometimes that when we're having this conversation, we're veering further away from that. That was what the exemption was originally, would have prevented social media companies from ever being included as a broadcaster, even if they were acting exactly as a broadcaster. And that was raised to us and flagged to us by stakeholders, such as in the music industry, who specifically said that to allow that to happen would actually put them at a disadvantage, specifically when we see that YouTube is the #1 streaming service for music in Canada. So that was the change that was proposed, is that social media companies, not their users, because the users are specifically excluded in 2.1, would be subject to the same rules as other broadcasters if they're acting as broadcasters. And as I mentioned with the YouTube example, this is really just about creating a fair platform and fair evenness in the way that we are treating different services who are doing the exact same thing and working in the same field. I want to highlight the urgency of this bill because the cultural sector has been very clear that these changes are needed and that they want to see this bill passed. And so I am very concerned about the delays that are proposed by the Conservative motion. And I would add to that the piece that having a charter statement before the bill is complete in its review and in all of the amendments doesn't really make sense because, as they know, there are amendments coming that will also further address some of their concerns that they have raised about user-generated content. So there are amendments, for example, with G13 that will be going to some of the issues that they have raised. And so to have a charter statement in advance of that would be very, very tricky. And I'll just underline, because this is a part where I'm having a bit of a tricky point with the Conservative upset about the removal of 4.1 and the statements about being taken by surprise, is that the Conservatives themselves proposed an amendment that would have brought social media companies in line, if they were acting as a broadcaster, to be included as a broadcaster. The only difference was that they had a carve out based on the number of users for the social media companies. But CPC 5 clearly also covered that, so that we would have the same impact of having social media companies when acting as a broadcaster being included as a broadcaster. So I'm not sure how they square that circle if they had started out in that place of also believing very much that social media companies acting as broadcasters should be included. Now, my proposal, and again, I'll need to see the exact wording before I can propose a sub-amendment, just so that people
Can I-
know. Yes?
Mr. Bruce, and I apologize for interrupting. I do this for a very sincere reason. We only received, Ms. McPherson, your amendment in one language. And as you know, we distribute. The normal course of things is that you could distribute with unanimous consent only in one language. Mr. Bruce, and I recognize you still have the floor. No worries. But Ms. McPherson, do you want to clarify there? Do you have in French as well?
Well, as it is about 6 words, I can very easily provide that in.
Okay.
I'm not confident with my own language, but I can tell you that I know how to say 10 jours.
Congratulations, that was very good. But I do need permission to do. I need unanimous consent in order to distribute your email from the clerk. So I'm looking for. I'll get back to you in a second, Mr. Brusen.
I can send you an updated version if that's appropriate in the next minute.
Oh, with the French? Okay, please. And then we can distribute it. But of course, everybody does have an understanding of what Ms. McPherson wants to do with the language that she's proposing and put on the table. I see nodding of heads. Yeah, okay. Now, I understand, Mr. Brusen, you would like to propose something as well. So please, you have the floor again.
Thank you. Well, just I'll put it out there where what I'm seeking to do, and then perhaps Ms. McPherson and I might be able to strike something on the wording we can see. But my suggestion would be, given that there are amendments that are still relevant that need to be considered if we were going to be getting a charter statement, that we actually do not suspend the clause by clause, and that we ask for the charter statement once the review is complete, so that we actually are putting before the lawyers for the review the full amended bill. And I say this just because without the full amendments, they're not actually providing us with they don't have a full picture on which to assess their charter statement. So that was the first part, would be that I would suggest that instead we should put it to the end and not suspend the clause by clause. The other portion that I would suggest is that rather, because of the haste really that is being asked of us on the part of the cultural industries, they're very, very concerned to see anything that will add any further delay in going ahead with this bill. Wanting to be sure that we do it right, absolutely, like that. And I'm not saying, we absolutely should aim to be getting it right. But all of these moves to suspend the clause by clause, anything like that, actually goes contrary to what the stakeholders are asking us to do, which is to try and move this along as quickly as we can. So I would suggest that the main part would be just if we struck out C in its entirety, rather than the amendment that Ms. McPherson proposed, if I understand the way she said it correctly, and to then also ask for the charter statement to be after the complete review of the bill.
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
1 second.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, with all due respect for Ms. de Brusen, I would just like to clarify. Ms. McPherson had already proposed an amendment. Now we're discussing another amendment. Shouldn't we conclude debate on the first amendment first, then vote, and then Ms. de Brusen, with all due respect, all the respect that I have for her, she can propose her sub-amendment. I'm not sure if I'm mistaken. I just want to clarify.
Well, Mr. Reyes, for clarification, you can propose a sub-amendment to what we're doing. We're now trying to, you were mixing clause by clause machinations with. Remember, we're doing a motion right now, so I think this might give you more clarity as I describe what is happening. What is happening is this: we had the motion from Ms. Harder. We had a few changes from Ms. McPherson comprising an amendment. Now Ms. DeBruzen wants to sub-amend, or what she hasn't moved it yet, to eliminate C. But let me go back for clarification. Mr. Brusen, are you moving as a sub-amendment that you want to eliminate Part C in its entirety?
That is correct.
All right, so now we have the sub-amendment that we are dealing with. And now, Mr. Brusen, you also mentioned that something along the lines of perhaps you could talk with Ms. McPherson about something. Would you like me to suspend for a short period of time?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I want to be very sure that I understand. Now we're talking about sub-amending an amendment that we have not already voted on. Is that proper procedure? The First Amendment had not been properly carried. I just want to be sure that this is in order. Should we not first vote on Ms. McPherson's amendment? This is for my own information.
I have sent it to the clerk
Sorry,
in both languages.
Ms. McPherson, go. Sorry, folks. Once again, remind everyone. Please get my attention. I know everyone has their hand up, but if you could just wave like this and as a point of clarification, thank you. That trying to make things better for our folks that are not in the room with us. Yeah. So, right. The clarification is this: what Mr. Brusen is doing also is to clarify the motion. I'm going to suspend for a couple minutes, probably not even, so I can look at the language part, because I'm concerned about the language part of it, folks, because we respectfully distribute in both languages. And I just want to make sure that we got that correct. So in the midst of a couple minutes, I'll get back to you, and Mr. Shampoo, I'll address your situation as well. Just give me a couple minutes. Ms. McPherson, go ahead.
Just that I have sent the French version. The French version has been sent to the clerk. I have also
Correct.
sent the English version to at least one member of each team, just because I don't have everybody's.
Okay. Please allow me these couple minutes. I'm just going to clarify this, just so that we're respectful of our rules. Okay. Thank you very much. Just a couple of minutes, folks. Being distributed as we speak. Mr. Shampoo, you had some question about connectivity and losing your spots. I believe you are next in line. Not according to what's on the screen, but you did lose connectivity for a short period of time, so I will give you the floor. So in re-examining the amendment put forward by Ms. DeBruzen, it's substantial enough that it does that it does change. So therefore, it has to be ruled as an amendment, not a sub-amendment. My apologies as I re-examine this. So therefore, we're still on the amendment put forward by Ms. McPherson. All right, so we have to dispense with that before we get to the other one. And again, the reason why I say that is because it's substantially different than reading. My apologies. Now, Mr. Shampoo, there you are. Go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to come back to the fact that we've often talked about this bill as being an imperfect bill, which of course explains the numerous amendments, even by the Liberals and the government. When we signed up to work on this committee, we were also signing up to improve the bill. And I feel that we have a responsibility towards workers in the cultural sector who need Bill C-10 to be passed. And we need to channel our energy in the right direction. With that said, even though I might have some problems regarding the Conservatives' discussion around the removal of 4.1, I do believe that it is very important when we're dealing with such fundamental questions, matters that have to do with the Charter. I don't think we have a choice. We have to ask ourselves the question. On Friday, this was brought up. The Conservatives probably knew that the NDP and Bloc were going to support the motion, even though we have some hesitations. But I do feel that one or maybe two of the ministers should give their opinion. There might be other ways around this. Here again today, we're discussing this amendment, but we already have solutions that we could put forward to significantly speed up our process without delaying matters further. So I think we do have a legitimate demand on the table, this request to hear from the ministers. And I think that we know that there are solutions to our situation. We could perhaps go back to Section 4.1. It didn't seem that the Liberals wanted to, but I think that that could be a possible solution. We could perhaps consider G13 in order to see if that resolves any concerns. I want to repeat the importance of not further delaying our work on this bill, because C10 is very important and must be adopted before the end of the parliamentary session, and we have the duty to work in that direction. Mr. Chair, I think we should quickly move on to Ms. McPherson's motion so that with all of the good faith in the world, we can continue with this legitimate request and continue our good work. Thank you.
Ms. Harder. Ms. Harder, are you there? Okay, Mr. Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I see Ms. Harder as a return. Do you want to go? Mr. Chairman, I see she's back, so I'll wait for her to go.
Yeah, we're in a technical world. We can be forgiving. Ms. Harder.
I'm so sorry. My apologies. Sure. Mr. Chair, with regards to this or to the amendment that is on the floor, I am the member who, of course, put the motion initially. So I just would like to convey my support for Ms. McPherson's request. I think it's very reasonable. I also would like to comment on Ms. DeBruzen. One of the comments that she made is that Conservatives were in support of further regulation for social media companies who act as broadcasters. That's a fair statement. However, the context in which she is making that statement is unfair and actually makes that statement incredibly false. Because right now we're not talking about that. We're not talking about social media companies acting as broadcasters. We're talking about individuals who are posting videos of their kids or their dog or their cat on their social media platforms. We're talking about user-generated content. That is what we are discussing when we talk about 4.1. And so that being the case, let's maintain truth when we're talking about the terms on the table.
Mr. Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as a member that rarely gets riled up or rarely tries to be very partisan, I do have to say that I have to express some discomfort as to some of what has been said already today. The idea somehow that Liberals, and in this case also the Bloc and the NDP, because all three parties voted to remove Clause 3, are somehow less dedicated to freedom of expression than the Conservatives is somewhat shocking to me. And I can point to numerous examples over time of the Conservatives being less charter prone than the other parties, but I won't right now. I just find that to have been an unfortunate type of allegation that really should be withdrawn. And if I want to point to, for example, support of a law that uses the notwithstanding clause that was recently adopted, I could. With respect to the question of what happened the other day, we had a clause that is going to be dealt with by other amendments to the bill. There's an original clause in the bill that deals with user-generated content. There's G13. There's another amendment as well that we intend to introduce that all deal with user-generated content and ensuring that that is not, that users are not subject to CRTC regulation. They are not broadcasters. The Conservatives suddenly have raised the issue of the removal of 4.1 and argued that this is the ultimate violation of potentially a freedom of expression in the Charter. But what they failed to acknowledge is exactly what Mr. Brusen said. When we came up to 4.1, the Conservatives proposed their own amendment that Mr. Reyes put forward, CPC 5, which would in itself have eliminated the provisions of 4.1 for those people who are using online undertakings that have more than 250,000 subscribers in Canada or receive more than $50 million per year in advertising, for example, Facebook. So for example, Facebook with 25 million or 24 million users in Canada, this section would have thus said that Facebook is responsible in the case of, or applies to 4.1. Facebook is not covered by 4.1. Essentially, they're saying if you were a larger undertaking, you would have been you would not be exempt from 4, or you would be covered by. You could be a broadcaster. You could be covered by 4. You'd be outside 4.1. So if this was such a violation of freedom of expression, why would they say that a larger online undertaking could then be covered by be outside the exemption, I guess is what I want to say. It's a frustrating type of thing where I hear this and I just feel that it was a manufactured issue to try to scare and confuse Canadians about something that is not the case. And personally, what I think would be a reasonable solution would be that we do a charter statement once we have all of the amendments adopted on the bill. And then we stop and we don't put the bill back to the House. We wait once all the amendments are adopted to have a charter statement that then calls upon the Department of Justice to review their initial charter statement and say, in light of everything that's been adopted as an amendment to the bill, amend your charter statement to confirm to us that there's been no impact or tell us what the impact has been. And we don't send the bill back to the House until we get that. If that charter statement causes us to rethink things, we then go back and review those clauses in the bill. But I don't believe that it makes sense to have a charter statement in the middle of amendments on the bill. It's what essentially would say you're halfway through your work, you don't have amendments that you know cover this subject, but we're asking you in the interim to give a charter statement. It's very strange to me. So I don't think we should suspend work. I think clause 3 for sure should be eliminated. So I know Mr. Brusen has to put that forward at a future date. I have no problem that there's a time limit for charter statements when it's the time to do it, or a time limit for the ministers to appear when it's time to do it. But it does seem weird that we're accepting the premise that somehow this removal of this one clause, without considering other amendments coming forward, should halt the work of the committee. I find this to be exceptionally a partisan maneuver, one that is really unfortunate given the good collaboration of this committee up until now, and one that really doesn't seek any type of consensus whatsoever, but rather assumes the worst for something that was never intended that way, and that 3 of the 4 parties on the committee supported, and that the 4th party themselves did not propose to include everyone, but rather they proposed something that would exempt people from 4.1. So it is not fair where we are now. I get it, but I also want to work with my colleagues to find a solution. And I think the right solution, to be honest, would be let's go through the bill, adopt whatever amendments we want to adopt, and stop. Don't send the bill back to the House. Don't approve the bill. Ask for a charter statement from the department at that point and say, we want to know with all the amendments, what is the effect? And then call the ministers to appear before the committee at that point. And then if we're satisfied, we go on and send the bill back. And if we're not satisfied, we go back in the bill and fix whatever we think we need to fix. That would be my humble request to committee members. I just don't see why we're accepting a false premise, and I think this is taking us on a false premise. Thank you very much.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, before I ask my question, allow me 2 brief comments. Firstly, yes, indeed, the cultural sector says it's urgent. We must carry this Broadcasting Act, but not at any cost. It's not because there's an emergency that we should adopt a bad bill. Amendments that have been tabled really show that the initial version of Bill 10 during first reading had a lot of serious weaknesses even before we got to 4.1. With all the respect I have for all my Liberal colleagues who are doing everything not to accept this legitimate request to ask for a legal opinion of the minister of the Justice Minister, who is Liberal, a lot of experts, university professors are raising red alerts to say that there is a weakness and we must face it. Your expertise versus the expertise of these experts shows us that we must look at that closely. Liberals say, let's listen to experts, senior officials, to all those who send us messages. We got these messages. Look on the social networks. Some very credible people sent some alerts, not just alerts, but red alerts, to say there is a big weakness. Mrs. McPherson's request, her sub-amendment, is very legitimate. Let's give ourselves 10 days. If the minister wants to come and see us, it'll be quicker. We're talking about a couple of days, and you're doing your best to let us know that everything will collapse just for a couple of days. You've been in power for 6 years. You never tabled that. You've approached... You've repealed some of these amendments, including this one, out of 120. So at the outset, the bill was not well conceived, and that's why we're at where we are today. Mrs. McPherson, congratulations for this amendment or sub-amendment, I'm not sure, so that we can have a deadline. Then members could say, okay, a maximum of days so that we can pressure the minister, the heritage minister, to give us a legal advice. Well, good. We'll be better tooled to do our work as legislators. Because we all have our own expertise, Mr. Housefather. I know you're a lawyer, but I don't have that kind of training. But I'm a manager, an administrator, and I like to defend the freedom of expression and the the Charter of Rights. When people are telling me, just a second now, whoa, I think I deserve more explanations. It's not exaggerated. Mrs. McPherson says a maximum of 10 days, and we think the minister should talk to us and give us some legal advice. The Minister of Justice has access to a lot of experts, senior officials. If he wants to table his advice, he can do it quickly if he really wants to. There wouldn't be any further delay. But as Mr. Champoux said, we're talking about this request in order to clarify a situation on freedom of expression under the Canadian Charter. I don't know what I can add, honestly. Let's just carry this sub-amendment. Then the main motion that was tabled, and ask the minister to provide us his legal advice, and invite the heritage minister also. And as you've said, in a spirit of cooperation, trying to find some flexibility to have the best bill at the end. We might not all agree on everything. Maybe there'll be some division, but that's what Parliament is all about. We represent all Canadians from every walk of lives, from every region. That's what democracy is all about. That's why I'm so proud to be Canadian, to be Quebecer. My parents left Egypt to come here, and they repeated to us, we moved to Canada to give you the right to freely express yourself. That is the main reason why my father, my mother, and all the family moved to Canada. And now I'm a member of Parliament, elected by citizens. So say what you want. You can insult us as you wish. But I think this is a matter of freedom of expression. We should ask for legal advice. We should accept Mrs. Harder's motion and Mrs. McPherson's sub-amendment. We should do that on behalf of Canadians, following the red alerts, the red flags given to us by experts. When I hear some people say that it's pure demagoguery, that it's all make-believe, well, be careful with that. Be careful, Liberal members. You're saying that to law experts, to law professors, university professors, experts in freedom of expression, who are fighting for these issues that are so important for us. So I'd be a little careful before attacking us. Let's go forward. Let's ask for that legal advice, and then we can resume our work. Thank you so much.
I just want to update everybody where we are right now, because we had a motion from Ms. Harder, and we didn't have a sub-amendment. We had an amendment by Ms. McPherson. And to paraphrase, it talks about the 10 days, maximum 10 days. Okay. Now, Mr. Brusen wanted to move a sub-amendment, but because it was materially different from the amendment of Ms. McPherson's, I had to rule that out of order. So we are still on, right now, Ms. McPherson's amendment to the main motion of Ms. Harder. Just so that everybody is clear where we are still on the amendment. Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And firstly, I must apologize for last Friday. This video world that we're in of Zoom, as we normally had been for many years, sitting in committees, and all sorts of MPs are sitting around tables and may not be the official ones. And so not remembering that under Zoom, we are in a different practice. So Mr. Chair, I apologize for my mistake in that format. So moving on, though, I appreciate a lot of the information that has been shared, the debate, the emotion. We have a lot of smart people sitting around the table, and usually I like to listen to a lot of smart people, and we have on this committee. I would agree that there's been a lot of conciliatory work done, or lots of votes that may not agree, but it's been done in a way that has been done professionally. and I always, appreciate working with people who want to do it in that way. I'm a little concerned about the delays that supposedly this is creating. And it has been mentioned it's been 6 years to write a piece of legislation. That's a long time. So there's been lots of time, and I'm not sure there's a reason why we won't be here next week, next month, this fall, next spring. I I don't see anything about an election being proposed, so I don't think we're going anywhere. So we have some time. 10 days max is not a lot of time in that framework. What was astounding to me and a lot of other people was how come there were so many amendments? And sure, I've been in situations where you've written policy, don't think of all the consequences, absolutely don't. And that's why you share it, work it through, find out the consequences of what policies are. And so you can make those corrections. But the number of amendments, and this one, in my history in the House, I've never seen a piece of legislation come from the government with the number of amendments that they've brought also. This is huge numbers. Who was drafting this thing? Now, we were conciliatory to a point, but the reaction that I have seen since Friday in the media, this is not me, the media out there, all the various reporting it, which then precipitated my inbox just filling up with things that they had read in the media, which I find that it wasn't me that was doing it, the media reporting on this and the experts that then were quoted. So there's a lot of people that have responded to this particular amendment that they didn't feel that it was right. And a lot of media have been reporting. So it's got a lot of attention. I haven't had this much attention in a committee in the sense that an amendment in the number of years I've been here. This is huge in the sense of response that I've received, but it was from the media that they were seeing this. There, there is just a real challenge. So when you talk about stakeholders pushing it, I got 115,000 stakeholders, and trust me, I heard from a lot of them. So I think a 10-day max that MP McPherson has put forward gives us an opportunity to deal a little more with this because the public isn't seeing it as something that makes sense. So we've had goodwill. And I think this is a motion that continues to give us goodwill in the sense of proceeding on a very, very volatile situation. There's lots of opinions. I've got 9 to 10 weekly newspapers in my writings, and those letters to the editor, they're pretty volatile on both sides of many issues. So somebody said, well, are those newspapers then who have digital formats, are they going to be at risk of having their newspapers taken off because of letters they produce in a digital format? I guess I have no answer for that. So we have people who are expressing their opinions in my weekly newspapers and my writing, who those owners of those papers, independent, many of them, are a little concerned that when they put that on social media as platforms, as that's where they're putting their digital papers, they're concerned they're at risk. I don't have an answer for that. So these are some more of the questions that we haven't had a chance to discuss. We haven't had a chance to get a legal opinion on. So we have a motion here. And I know Mr. Bruson, who I've known for some time, has got a further motion she's going to make. But I think the one that we've got on the table now is a positive one. And I hope that we pass it. The one that Mr. Bruson is considering putting on next, I'm not sure that does what this needs to be done now. We need to take a break here of some time to get an expert opinion. We need to have some time to get things clarified. If we don't, we're not going to get good, rational thought questions answered. It's time we do exactly what this motion says. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I want to comment just briefly on some of the language that I've heard today, and I will admit that I'm not a lawyer like Mr. Housefather or Mr. Brusen. I'm just a an old small town mayor. But one thing that I do know is that language matters. Language counts, and the way clauses are worded and what people say in committee matters. And I would suggest quite strongly to what Mr. Brusen said about we're aiming to get this right. That's not good enough to aim to get it right. We have to get this right. And the concern that's been raised, but not by me, I certainly didn't catch it, but by other people who are far smarter and more knowledgeable on this issue than I am. The question that by taking 4.1 out, that it opens a window for the potential to regulate individual users' content by regulating the forums they use or the platforms they use to post their content. That despite Minister Guilbeault's rather fumbling attempt to try to say he didn't want to do that, the intention to not want to do it isn't enough. We have to make sure that window is not open in any way. This has to be airtight. This is a fundamental freedom. The freedom of expression has to be protected. And like my colleagues have said, and I think Ms. McPherson has certainly proposed an excellent amendment to our motion to put some time frames to this. We agree with that. So we're not trying to delay things. We're not trying to just filibuster as we've seen go on in so many other committees. This has worked really well. I like all of you. Mr. Housefather and I have been on television together talking about how we can disagree without being disagreeable. We're not trying to be disagreeable. We're trying to make sure that we get what all Canadians want, what I think, frankly, all members of this committee want, is to make sure that we get this right, that those protections are there and not in any way, that there's no wiggle room anywhere to affect Canadians' rights online. And I think that my bigger concern too, and I recognize the comments that have been made about waiting until the very end when we're done doing clause by clause. But my concern is that this is fundamental enough in terms of changing of the intent of the bill that what we hear from the Minister of Justice and the legal decision or the legal opinion on this change, I think it's substantive enough that that charter statement may affect some of our decisions going forward on some of these other amendments. So it's well worth taking 10 days to make sure we get it right, because we're not aiming to protect Canadians' freedoms of expression. It is an absolute. We must do it. And to suggest that this is a manufactured crisis, like, respectfully, my friend, Mr. Housefather, it's not manufactured. You as a former mayor, this is something we do have in common. When you hear concerns raised by your constituents, you don't just dismiss them as manufactured. You address them. And that's what we have heard. As conservatives, I've heard over and over again about this. And so it's important for us to address those concerns. And that's what we're doing. That's certainly my approach to this. And I think it's the approach of every other member. And I think, Ms. McPherson's amendment is a respectful approach to it as well, that keeps the ball rolling, because we all recognize the importance of getting this done. We all want to level the playing field. We all want to protect the Canadian cultural industry, not just protect it, but enhance it. So I'd love to see the rhetoric toned down a little bit and us work together. I love Ms. McPherson's very constructive amendment. I think that this is the way committees are supposed to work, constructively, cross party lines, to make sure that we get this right and that we protect Canadians, while also ensuring that there is a level playing field and Canadian culture is not lost in the mix. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate my colleague Scott's comments, and I agree with him. We can definitely disagree without being disagreeable, and this committee has shown that in the past. What I wanted to just say is, because people have raised the issue of law, what you wouldn't do is ask for a charter statement in the middle of amending a contract. This is the real issue here. We have a clause that's come out. We have other clauses that may go in or may not go in depending on the vote of the committee. I'm totally okay with the idea that at the end of the committee's work, when all the amendments that the committee wants to consider go forward, we ask for an amended charter statement and we don't send the bill back to the House. And in the event that we find that there is an incongruity of what we have done with the charter statement, we go back and fix that. But it does not make sense to say that the charter statement should come right now before we've adopted all the amendments we intend to adopt on the bill, because then they're not considering what may come in after something else has gone out. So again, I'm going to vote for Ms. McPherson's amendments to put the 10-day time limit, because I believe it's an improvement over the initial motion that had no time limit. But I still will support further amendments to change this motion to actually make sense, which would be, one, remove the stopping of the clause by clause and continuing clause by clause, so that we get to a point where there can actually be a proper review by the Department of Justice of what the end result of the bill is, instead of looking at the bill with half of the work done and half of the work not done. Because all that means, again, of course, is that we can adopt another amendment and then somebody could say, well, there should be a charter statement now because that amendment changes the previous charter statement. So again, I will support this amendment, but I will support other amendments and propose other amendments until we get to a place where, to me, this makes sense, which is a charter statement that comes after all of the amendments on the bill are actually adopted, and we learn what the overall effect is, not what the effect is somehow in the middle of the process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Harder.
Sure. I, you know, I understand the argument that is being made by the party opposite in terms of putting this off until the very end. There's a problem there, though. However, the former CRTC Commissioner Peter Menzies had already said that this legislation was a, quote, it doesn't just infringe on free expression, it constitutes a full-blown assault upon it and through it the foundations of democracy, end quote. That's pretty clear from a former CRTC commissioner, who I believe is probably one of the most qualified individuals in this country to comment on this legislation. Now, that said, the argument that we should just put it off until the end is like saying, well, yeah, like the legislation might already be bad, but let's make it worse. And then once it's like really bad, then we can go and seek out a charter opinion or a charter statement. Why not just get it now? Why not just get the charter statement now so that we can be building on a solid foundation as we go forward, rather than continuing to build on a weak foundation? It makes no sense to keep going. This is absolutely fundamental. We're talking about the charter rights protected under Section 2B, and we absolutely should seek that advice from those experts before moving forward. Thank you.
Just a reminder, folks, we're still on the amendment proposed by Ms. McPherson. Mr. Aitchison.
Yeah, just quickly to that point again, that Mr. Housefather raised, and I think Ms. Harper actually addressed it a little bit as well, and that is that, the concern has arisen based on the removal of this clause. And so, I agree fundamentally that, asking for an updated charter statement based on the removal of a clause that's caused such consternation among people that are far smarter than me, it's well worth making sure that, we haven't done some fatal flaw here to this legislation before spending any more time going through clause by clause. If this is some fatal flaw in the legislation that we're reviewing, then we'll waste an awful lot of time going through other amendments. If this negates the whole thing. And I fundamentally believe that an updated charter statement, an updated analysis from the country's top lawyer may actually inform many of the discussions on these next clauses. It's well worth taking the time to get it right. as opposed to, potentially wasting time that we didn't need to waste. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lower my hand. I do want to say we need to move forward as fast as possible. We have amendments proposed from all sides that will improve this bill. And I think what the opposition is doing here, especially setting this motion with no time limits, is literally stalling when we need to be working together. We have been working together. We have amendments on all sides. We need to move faster on this. We need to work together on this. The idea that that we need a charter statement now, I don't understand that. We have amendments that would already protect. We have amendments protecting user-generated content. That's not the intent of this bill. That's not what's going to happen. And we have further amendments coming that are going to further protect user-generated content. That's not the scope of this bill. But we have an arts community that needs our support, and these stall tactics are not helping. And I would wish we would move together. This idea that we would get a charter statement now. A rough analogy would be a restaurant critic trying to, you wanted to get a review on a meal, and after every ingredient added, you wouldn't bring it to the restaurant critic and say, here, review this meal. We have a chance to fix this bill. We have the chance to improve this bill. We have a chance to work together to do this. I'm concerned that the opposition will do this every step of the way before these amendments are done. Let's wait until these amendments are fixed, and then let's bring the charter statement in.
Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to very quickly say that I think it's important to recognize that the 10 days is the maximum, that the Justice Minister could bring back information sooner. We could continue on with our work. Like many of the members have said before me, we have a lot of work to do on this. It's vitally important. I want this to happen as fast as quickly. So I would urge that we would vote on this, that the Justice Minister could bring that back just as fast as he possibly could for our consideration, and then we could continue doing the important work this committee was mandated to do.
Seeing no further debate, we're going to go to a vote, and I'm just going to recap what it is we're voting on. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Suffice to say, we are, from the main motion from Ms. Harder, we are now voting on the amendment proposed by Ms. McPherson. In Part A, she adds in the next 10 days. In Part B, again, she adds in the next 10 days. And in C, there are two changes. Suspend clause by clause consideration of Bill C-10 for a maximum of 10 days, and provided that it has received the updated charter statement. Is everyone clear on what we're voting on? Can I make the magical assumption that we're going to do a recorded vote? So I don't need to go through that. Let's just go to a vote. Clerk?
Yes, sir. On Ms. McPherson's amendment to Ms. Harder's motion, Mr. Housefather.
Yes.
Madame Bessette.
Oui.
Ms. de Brusen.
Yes.
Mr. Van Koeverden.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Monsieur Reyes.
Wait.
Mr. Aitchison.
Yes.
Mr. Shields.
Yes.
Ms. Harder.
Yes.
Mr. Champ. Ms. McPherson.
Yes.
Sir, that's 11 yeas.
Maybe I didn't have to go to a vote. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so now we're back to the main motion from Ms. Harder as amended. Okay, I see Ms. de Brusen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I mentioned at the outset, I had a few amendments that I was going to be proposing to this motion as well. The first part would be to strike the sub C part to this motion, which would be to be suspending our clause by clause. The fact that we have further amendments, I've mentioned it several times, including G13 and others that would be relevant to this. And the fact that stakeholders have indicated that they want us to continue working on this and to get this done. So to show that we're still doing the work that needs to be done, that we are ready to roll up our sleeves and keep doing the work, that we absolutely believe a charter statement is helpful, but that we want to make sure that we are not stopping the important work that we're doing. I would propose removing the sub C. In addition, what I would propose is the removal of the preamble, which is that given the deletion of section 4.1 sentence, reason being, if we're sending it for a legal opinion without presupposing what the legal opinion would be, they know what they need to do with a charter statement. I would remove that. And in sub A, the proposal would be request that the Minister of Justice produce an updated charter statement as soon as possible after clause by clause is completed. That wording would be repeated again in sub B, which would be that instead of appear before committee to discuss, would do explain in writing the implications of C10 for users of social media services as soon as possible after clause by clause is completed. So changing it to as soon as possible, allowing us to continue the work while we do it, and removing the preamble.
Okay, I think I've got most of it. The only thing is the wording becomes a little awkward if you look at the second paragraph. We're starting out with if that's your opening paragraph, the second one, then we have to tighten up the language there at the very beginning. If you look to the second paragraph,
I think that you could just if you just wrote that given.
Okay.
So you could just insert that.
Okay. I'm just going to, instead of saying and given that, obviously you just say that the current, just start with the word that and eliminate and given. Okay. Sorry, I know that may seem small, but I have to be sure about this. In addition to that, we have paragraph 1. You're proposing to eliminate that, as well as part C, 2C, in Ms. Harder's motion. And within 2A, you're proposing that provide an updated charter statement as soon as possible. And in B, you're saying that to provide a written explanation instead of appearing before the committee.
That is correct.
That is correct. Now, do you have anything to pass to the clerk?
I am sending it in both official languages to the clerk right now.
That is great. Thank you very much. Well, in the meantime, you still have the floor if you wish to discuss it further.
As much as I enjoy continuing it, I think that the points have been made. The short form being that it is important. I actually, I have no issue with getting a charter review of it. I think that is fine. I think that fundamental freedoms, like such as the freedom of expression, is extremely important. And so absolutely fine with that. But the key issues I have here are about the amendments, which I have referred to several times, which I think would be key to be part of that consideration, and making sure that we have a fulsome record that we provide. If you're going to get a legal opinion, you have to give them the full record to analyze, or else you're not getting a full legal opinion. So making sure that we can try and get that information, keep working, and do what the stakeholders have asked us to do, what the cultural industries have asked us to do, which is get it right and get it done. And we're trying to get it done. So that allows us to continue to do the hard work that we have ahead of us while getting that charter review.
Ms. Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, of course, the amendment that has been made to the motion that I originally presented on Friday substantially changes its intent. The intent is to get the charter statement sooner rather than later. And that, of course, is so that we know the foundation on which we are debating this legislation. Does it hold up to the charter, given that 4.1 has now been removed from the bill? And I believe that the only way we can answer this question, of course, is by submitting it for this review and requesting the statement. Given that the member opposite has asked for that request to be removed, of course, I could not support the amendment that she has brought forward. In addition to that, I believe, if I understood her amendment correctly, to say as soon as possible rather than the next 10 days. If I'm not sure, maybe I misunderstood that, but if that is the case, I'm confused as to why we would move in the direction of removing the amendment that was just approved, which is the 10-day clause. I think it's appropriate. I actually think that the amendment previous strengthened my original motion, and so I'm more than happy to support the 10 days, as has already been passed. But again, just drawing attention to the fact that this charter statement is of great importance, as a number of qualified individuals have indicated that they have significant concern. And indeed, I believe that Canadians are rightfully concerned, as we have heard over the last number of days and seen reported in the media. We can also see that the minister, Mr. Guilbeault, is clearly unable to defend the removal of clause 4.1, and is unable to communicate to Canadians clearly why that would be necessary. He's also unable to communicate to them where their individual rights to post content of their choice is still remains protected. And so that being the case, again, I would ask that this review be done.
Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually take the government and Mr. Brusen at their word when they say they want to get this done quickly, which I think if in fact that is true, her motion doesn't really, it's not required. And I think that what guarantees this committee that we will get back to getting on with the clause by clause review and getting this done is by keeping particularly C in there, suspending clause by clause consideration. Because if it's that important to the minister, he'll get here quickly. I think that if we take that out and we just keep going, he can drag his feet, and this becomes just a war of words. And I think that this actually holds the government's feet to the fire, which I think we need to do, so that we can get back to getting this work done. I do not support Mr. Brusen's amendment. There could have been parts of it that I might have been able to support, but not that. And since she's punched them all together, we're stuck with not being able to support it. I'm not, anyhow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. As you may have noticed through many times in our deliberations, I sometimes get slightly confused. To avert that, could you please, if you're not asking, if you've asked a question or you've made a contribution, could you please lower your electronic hand? I have a bunch of legacy hands everywhere. Okay. So I see Mr. Reyes. You still want to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor to discuss Ms. de Brusen's new amendment. I do not understand. All at once we're being asked to speed up. We end up compromising on something that everyone had voted in favor of, Ms. McPherson's motion. We could move forward quickly. As I said earlier, the minister has access to a whole plethora of experts. We have a meeting coming up on Friday. We would be ready to hear the minister's legal opinion from the Minister of Justice. This would clarify matters for us, not just for us as committee members who have a serious decision to make. And I would like to remind everyone that there are 118 amendments to this bill, which clearly right out the gate was a deficient bill. We have heard from witnesses from numerous sectors. We did the work of hearing their testimony, reading their briefs. However, the government did not take into consideration their concerns. We are talking about the deletion of an entire section of the bill that was removed by the government with absolutely no warning. They did it Friday 1 week ago, quickly as if they wanted to sweep it under the rug. Ms. Harder's motion deals with this, and we are not the only opposition party to ask for this. I repeat, these are emeritus university professors, legal experts, political analysts, and advocates of our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms rights. So I think this is the least we can do. We should wait for these opinions before we continue on. The minister has no one to blame but himself. He was not even capable of explaining in an interview this weekend. He, with all of the resources at his fingertips to put this bill forward, was unable to explain. So imagine if the minister can't explain. Well, there were gaps in the bill. The section in question has been removed. And in response, numerous Canadians sounded the alarm because they were concerned about users of social media. And this is technical business. We're not experts. We ourselves seek the opinions of experts. This is concerning social media users, individuals who upload content. We're not talking about major influencers on TikTok or YouTube. We're talking about your everyday Canadians who use these networks to share and connect. We're even talking about artists who use their own personal channel to gain visibility. But after the deletion of Section 4.1 in Clause 3, these people, or rather, the power has been given to the CRTC. Will the CRTC use that authority? We don't know. But power has been given to the CRTC to regulate those people, those individuals, generating content in the same way as major players. The government opened up this gap in the bill by deleting that section. So we can't wait before we move forward. We need clarification on this matter. It isn't a small matter. It wasn't just a small, insignificant section that was deleted. If any of the other amendments that we changed were problematic, the flags would have been raised. But flags have been raised this time, so we know that we have to come back and look at that decision. I repeat, the request in Ms. Harder's motion is entirely valid. It was enhanced by Ms. McPherson, and Ms. McPherson's amendment doesn't stop the minister from acting more quickly. And the more quickly the minister acts, the more helpful that will be for our arts and culture sector. The committee must do its work. The minister must come and testify before the committee. We must hear a legal opinion so that we as committee members and so that the experts can analyze the current situation. And it has been said, not by me, Alain Reyes, this has been said, that it was an attack on freedom of expression. Michael Geis said he had never seen such an anti-internet government. We also heard from former administrators on the CRTC who are tearing their hair out in public to say what a problem they had with this matter. Now, I have a little Twitter account myself. I don't have as many followers as the Prime Minister. But on Twitter now, I'm seeing people resharing my posts. My Twitter account has exploded. I've never seen the likes of it in my 15-year political career. So this is not an insignificant mistake on the part of the government. This is a major mistake. And, Mr. Chair, I hope that we can stop our discussions now and that we can simply carry Ms. Harder's motion. I hope the Prime Minister is listening to us, or at least his senior officials. I hope that they are already preparing the Minister of Justice's statement that he will come and present to us so that we may afterwards continue on with our work. And I would like to say a little something to everyone listening to us in the arts and culture sector. We all want a good bill. That's what we have all wanted from the start. The problem is that this bill wasn't a good one from the start. That is why all political parties have suggested corrections and amendments in order for the bill to be the best possible bill it can be before it goes back to the House of Commons to be passed. But at the point where we are now, we cannot continue without hearing a professional legal opinion on the matter at hand. So I hope we will move forward with Ms. Harder's motion. I hope we won't remove the essence of the motion when Ms. de Bruzen says as soon as possible. We are against this. The government must come soon and explain itself for committee members and for all of the experts. And Mr. Chair, usually when it comes this time, I would ask for a health break. But I haven't asked for one because debate has been so compelling today. We have not even voted on Ms. Harder's motion yet, so I'm sure this Friday we will re-debate this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was interesting listening to the amendments that MP de Bruzen had made. And I might have been like Scott Atchison, my colleague, in the sense of what he thought of maybe there was something there that you might have supported, but when she lumped them all in, it became just untenable. I thought I might have seen a motion that said, we will guarantee that once this is done, it will not be sent to the House, but we would guarantee a review. But that motion wasn't there, which she had said many times. Mr. Housefather had said it many, many times, but it wasn't there, which, you know, I get a little concerned about what she was saying, but yet it didn't happen. And yet she did an omnibus amendments of a number of them. And so when it refers to the urgency of this, you know, I'm an old guy. I remember 1970 when the Prime Minister implemented the War Measures Act. That was an emergency. But a few years earlier than that, I was on Parliament Hill and there was a Vietnam War protest. There wasn't urgency, but it was allowed as free speech. Yeah, I go back a day or two. So when I see the movie Chicago 7, that brings back real concerns to me with free speech. So when I see the amendments that have been put forward, it's just not good enough in the sense to what she has put forward to fix what she says. And there has been no explanation of the urgency. We have cooperated in the House with a number of things to do with pandemic when things had to be passed quickly. Absolutely. You bet. Nobody from that party has talked about the reason why it's so urgent and why this has to be done today, tomorrow, with a flawed bill. I don't see a house burning down. I don't see a War Measures Act needs to be implemented. This is not a pandemic piece of legislation for funding for people who need it. So there has been no explanation of the urgency which they continue to mention. Culture? Absolutely. Huge supporter of culture. You bet. And we have great culture in this country. But when they talk about urgency, but no rationale for why it's urgent, really leaves it vacant. And again, freedom of speech to me is a personal thing that I learned a long time ago how valuable it is when I stood in front of Parliament buildings in 1967 and what happened in our country in the 60s and 70s. This is really important to me. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Now to Mr. Housefather.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to correct a few things. My colleague, my friend Mr. Reyes, repeatedly said that the government made a mistake. It isn't the government that removed Clause 3. It was committee members. We are all independent members of the committee, and all Liberal members and the NDP member and the Bloc member all voted to remove Clause 3. It wasn't the government. And secondly, even the Conservatives wanted to amend Clause 3 in order to limit that clause to certain users. So if that clause was so terrible, then why did the Conservatives decide to amend it with their amendment CPC 5? I find that the debate is regrettable.
I maintain the position that I said. I am not saying that it is absolutely desperate to finish things in 1 day or 2 days. What I am saying is that without seeing the scope of all the amendments on the section that has been amended, it would be impossible to make sense of a new charter statement. We need to finish the amendments and continue the clause by clause so that at the end of the results, because we know there are other amendments coming forward that have not yet been debated that deal with the exact issue of the removal of Section 3. There are other amendments that deal with exemptions for users of social media and posts that are put up from the CRTC. So how can any attorney then give a charter statement without having the full scope of those amendments? It doesn't make sense. The reason to continue with clause by clause is to finish all the amendments. And so that the person doing a charter review can then look at the overall context of the bill, including any and all amendments, including those amendments that are still to come forward that deal with this very same issue. It makes no sense to say we're stopping now. They can't consider further amendments that may come forward that we know are coming forward and give us a charter statement. I do support what Mr. Shields said, that you then stop. At the end of the amendments, you stop. You don't send the bill back to the House. You then have a charter statement. And from my perspective, you do whatever you want with the ministers and their presence or non-presence. But you have the charter statement taking into consideration everything that happens on clause by clause. And then if need be, because we haven't sent it back, we return to other clauses of the bill if the charter statement tells us something that I don't expect it to tell us. But it doesn't make sense to stop clause by clause to get an interim charter statement when there's other relevant amendments that deal with the very same issues. And so that is my perspective. And I just don't understand why there's such a desperate need to have the charter statement before those amendments are put forward and before the public can consider, and most importantly, the lawyers drafting the revised charter statement can consider those amendments vis-a-vis the deletion of Section 3 of the bill. If there were no other amendments coming forward on this issue, it may make sense, but there are amendments coming forward on the very same issue, which would definitely change the position of any lawyer reviewing the bill. So again, I'm not going to speak to the wording of this particular amendment, but that is what I think should happen. And Mr. Chairman, I just would like a brief word from you. Are we continuing past 1? Because if we are, perhaps we could have a suspension so we could all, just take a brief break and come back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Housefather. Well, as you know, when we conclude a meeting and adjourn or suspend for that matter, it's usually done on implied consent from everyone. So if someone doesn't want to end this particular session, then we will continue on. But that time is okay. So we're a minute away. I'm not sure. I guess I'm going to have to go back to the committee here and ask for your input as to whether you want to continue this or we're going to stop here and reconvene on Friday as put out in the schedule, put out by the business of committee. I see for a point of order or anything like that, but you can just looking for your input. I heard someone wants to speak on what I just mentioned. You have to raise your hand because. Oh, there you go, Mr. Reyes. Sorry.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, on a une période de...
Mr. Chair, there is a question period in about 1 hour with members' statements. We haven't had the opportunity to do our work. Given the time that remains, we haven't had lunch. There were no health breaks. I think we should suspend and come back on Friday.
That's because you want to engage in the current debate. But if you want to weigh in on if you want this to continue, or do you want to keep to our original schedule where you end now, can you please do this? Seeing no further comment from after Mr. Reyes, I'm going to assume that implied consent is still with us and that we are going to conclude the meeting right now to reconvene on Friday as scheduled. Okay, very good then. So we'll reconvene on Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern, and we'll be resuming debate once again on the amendment proposed by Ms. de Bruzen on the main motion put forward by Ms. Harder. Mr. Champoux.
Mr. Chair, maybe I missed a couple of seconds here. I wanted to give my opinion. We've talked over and over and over again on this topic. We did beat around the bush. I think we could take another 5 minutes to vote on this motion, maybe, so that Friday we can keep on our work, so to allow the government and the minister to produce the famous statement. Let's stop beating around the bush. Let's stop delaying all that.
I'm going to go to Ms. McPherson. Ms. McPherson, if you could be very quickly, please.
Just that I was waiting for Mr. Champoux to speak because he had put his hand up and had expressed that he wanted to, and that's why I waited. But I agree. Let's just I understand Mr. Reyes's concern. Let's take a few moments now to do the vote, and then we can actually continue on with the work, continue to do what we were sent here to do, please.
Well, I wouldn't mind going to a vote, but the problem is I have a speakers list here, and I can only go to a vote when the speakers list has collapsed, of which I still have hands up to speak on this, including Ms. de Bruzen. So now I'm in a position where we can continue for another 5 minutes, but I can't guarantee you there's going to be a vote. Okay. That being said, let's do another 5 minutes if you wish, 5 to 10 minutes. Ms. de Bruzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The hope that I had, and actually why I believe that Mr. Housefather was suggesting a suspension, was to be able to see if we can talk among the parties to actually come to a resolution so that we can actually figure something out. I still actually feel very strongly and most strongly about the part that a charter review partway through is not a proper charter review. And if we actually want to be able to get something that is a useful and a helpful charter review, and it's important. We're talking about freedom of expression. We want to make sure that the lawyers who are giving that advice have all of the best information for them to be able to do it right. That is what I think is the most important piece to all of this. And so I would suggest that we actually take some time. We have until Friday to talk among the parties and see if we can reach a resolution, because fundamentally it seems like we all agree that we would like a charter review on this question of freedom of expression, that we would like that certainty going forward. And so the question is, what information, full information, do we need to get to the lawyers to be able to get that? And also, how do we do it in a way that no longer delays what we're trying to do? How do we manage to get those points covered? And so I would suggest the best place for us now is, in fact, to adjourn so that we, and I'm not bringing it as a dilatory motion, I'm just proposing that we're in a better place to do that so that we can have a conversation between the parties and we can work together, as I'm sure we all want to, so that we can get to the best result on this one.
Okay. So you're not moving a motion. So Ms. Harder.
Thank you. I do believe that it's important to point out something that Mr. Brusen neglected to say when verbally, whether or not that was a sneaky attempt to get this through or just an oversight, I leave to her. However, nevertheless, Mr. Brusen, in her written form of the amendment, makes it clear that she is replacing the obligation for ministers to appear with an obligation to explain in writing. I find that problematic because we are asking the ministers to come. We are asking for the opportunity to ask them questions. We are asking for an opportunity to engage with them. And it would have been really nice for that to have been made clear from the beginning, because it makes it look like the wool is trying to be pulled over our eyes, which certainly doesn't give me a lot of faith, even in terms of making sure that we review or ask for that charter statement at the end of the study as opposed to now. So I absolutely cannot vote in favor of this motion. The fact that you that ministers would not be asked to come and testify in person, and that we would have the opportunity to ask questions, that seems unacceptable to me. And then further to that, again, I think just, there's a unfortunately faith is waning in this process, and the potential understanding that a charter statement might be done at the end. I'd prefer to have it done at the beginning, please. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be as quick as possible. I think we already went beyond the hour. Mrs. Harder did describe what I wanted to say. Mrs. de Brusen says that the minister would not be here to answer our questions on a very fundamental issue. So the minister wouldn't have to explain himself, there would be no accountability, and he wouldn't explain to all Canadians and experts of this liberal effort to interfere when people are trying to download things, users are trying to download stuff on the net. So I can't believe that we're pushing this to Friday. We should have already carried Mrs. Harder's motion as Mr. Shampoo asked for. So it seems that we'll have to come back to this again on Friday. Mr. Shields, you have the floor.
Move to adjourn.
All right, let's go to a vote. Madam Clerk. Just so that I'm clear. Adjourn what?
The meeting.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. On the motion to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Housefather.
Yes.
Madame Bissette.
Oui.
Mr. Brusen.
Yes.
Mr. Van Coerden.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Monsieur Reyes.
Wait.
Mr. Aitchison.
Yes.
Mr. Shields.
Yes.
Ms. Harder.
Yes.
Mr. Shampoo.
No.
Ms. McPherson.
No.
Nine yeas, 2 nays.
Okay, Meeting adjourned. We'll see you at the regular time on Friday at 1 Eastern. Thank you, everybody. Great debate.